Robert Conrad's appearance at this reunion has fans. Gasping Robert Conrad used to dare people to knock a battery off his shoulder. He jumped from buildings, fell 15 feet onto concrete, broke his skull twice doing stunts. But when he appeared at his final reunion, fans couldn't believe their eyes. He needed help just to sit down. His right side was paralyzed. His speech was slow. This wasn't age. This was the result of driving drunk in 2003. Today, we're going to explore the heartbreaking story of Hollywood's toughest actor. Robert Conrad's life started with chaos. Born on March 1, 1935 in Chicago, he was the child of two teenagers. His father was 17, and his mother, Alice Hartman, was only 15. But Alice wasn't an ordinary girl. At just 15, she became Mercury Records' first ever public relations director. While most teenagers were stuck in school, she was working with music legends and writing press releases. And all this while raising a child in a cramped tenement. It was wild, and it set the tone for the life her son would later live. At that same age, Robert made his own shocking move. He dropped out of school. No warning, no plan. Just left it all behind. He jumped straight into hard labor. First, he drove a milk truck through rough neighborhoods before dawn, dodging gangs and crooked cops. Then he worked the docks at Navy Pier, a place known for fights and disappearances. Next, he spent 12-hour shifts in a candy factory, coating chocolates in the heat. But while he worked, he dreamed. In secret, he studied acting books from the library. He practiced lines in the mirror. Nobody at work knew. He didn't want to be stuck in Chicago. He wanted the spotlight. By 17, he made another bold move. He married Joan Kenley. She came from money. Her family was from Chicago's wealthy North Shore. They saw Robert as just a laborer from the wrong side of town. So, the young couple ran. Robert even faked his identity. They found a small town in Indiana with loose marriage laws, paid a shady justice of the peace $50 to marry them, and vanished. Her parents tried to annul the marriage by bribing officials. The two fled to California, hiding under fake names. It sounds like a movie, but it was real life. Even as a husband, Robert didn't slow down. He sang in nightclubs across Chicago's seedy Rush Street. But these weren't normal clubs. Mobsters ran them. Politicians made deals there. Cops were paid off. Robert sang for all of them. Dangerous men filled the smoky rooms, but Robert had other things on his mind. During breaks, he'd sit in the back and watch old TV shows. "I can do better than that guy," he'd say out loud, pointing at actors on the screen. Everyone thought he was crazy, but he believed it completely. He even turned down long-term club contracts. He didn't want to stay. He wanted Hollywood. Then came Nick Adams. In 1957, Adams was already known for Rebel Without a Cause, but he struggled with mood swings and a dangerous lifestyle. When he met Robert, the timing was perfect. Robert was depressed, drinking heavily, and nearly gave up after a talent agent told him he had a face for radio. Adams found him in a Chicago bar and changed his life. He bought Robert a train ticket to Los Angeles, handed him $500, worth about $5,000 today, and even let him sleep on his couch. For 3 months, Adams helped him rehearse auditions late into the night. He introduced him to agents and casting directors. That act of kindness launched everything. Then came the stunt that changed his future. Someone offered Robert $80 to fall off a horse for a movie. That's all. But he pushed for more. He wanted 2 lines in the scene. It was a tiny moment, but it showed how he thought. He wasn't just going to fall, he wanted to be seen. That mix of guts and smarts set him apart. It earned him a reputation, the guy who'd take a hit if he could speak a line. That one decision led to hundreds more. He would go on to perform over 500 stunts in his career, all by himself. No doubles, just pain and persistence. In 1959, he landed the role that made him a star, Tom Lapaka on Hawaiian Eye. At first, he was paid very little. The role had been offered to Robert Wagner, who turned it down. Wagner suggested Conrad instead. It was the break he needed. The show ran for 4 seasons with 134 episodes. It wasn't just a detective show, it became a phenomenon. He even sang on the show. Warner Brothers released music featuring him and co-star Connie Stevens. Conrad became a household name almost overnight. Robert Conrad wasn't the first choice to play James West in The Wild Wild West. In fact, he was number 17 on the audition list. CBS had considered more well-known actors like Robert Horton and Ray Danton, but somehow Conrad got the part, and with it, a massive raise. He was paid $5,000 a week in 1965, during the show's first season. Just a few years earlier, on Hawaiian Eye, he was making only $300 a week. That was a 1,567% jump. Going from driving a milk truck to supporting his family, to becoming one of the highest-paid TV stars in the Western genre, was nothing short of incredible. CBS took a risk, but it paid off. Conrad's mix of charm and toughness helped turn the show into a hit. Over 4 seasons, from 1965 to 1969, his salary kept growing. But it wasn't just about the money. What really made the show stand out was the chemistry between Conrad and his co-star, Ross Martin. Ross Martin played Artemis Gordon, the clever gadget expert and master of disguise. He was the brain, while Conrad was the muscle. The two balanced each other perfectly. Conrad was all about action, doing his own stunts, throwing punches, climbing walls. Martin brought in the elegance, the humor, and the theatrical flair. Their teamwork was so strong that even when CBS brought the show back for a few TV movies in the late 70s, they both returned. But when Martin passed away in 1981, the magic ended. Conrad knew they could never recreate what they had. Conrad's commitment to action wasn't just for show. He was serious about doing every stunt himself. He believed it made the character more believable. In total, he did over 500 stunts during the series. No double, no stand-in. He said it didn't make sense to pay someone $1,300 to do a $150 stunt he could do better. And it saved time. Bringing in stuntmen slowed everything down. He trained hard to keep up with the demands, doing gymnastics and conditioning so he could jump, fall, and fight like a pro. Some of the stunts were dangerous. Very dangerous. One of them nearly killed him. On January 24, 1968, during an episode called The Night of the Fugitives, Conrad was doing a chandelier stunt. He didn't chalk his hands properly. He slipped. He fell 15 feet onto concrete. The impact fractured his skull 6 inches and gave him a bad concussion. He spent 72 hours in intensive care and missed weeks of filming. That season ended 2 weeks early. The fall was so real, they actually kept it in the episode when it aired. That wasn't the only time he got hurt. On another occasion, he cracked his skull so badly that doctors had to store a piece of it in the fridge before putting it back in. Years later, while filming Assignment Vienna, he had an even closer call. A stunt caused a neck injury that came within 1/8 of an inch of paralyzing him forever. His doctor told him that if it had gone just slightly deeper, he wouldn't be walking again. Still, he never backed down. He kept doing stunts his whole career. But the Wild Wild West wasn't just about stunts. It was ahead of its time. The show blended genres in a way nobody had seen before. Western themes were mixed with spy gadgets, sci-fi inventions, and strange horror elements. The show became a steampunk classic before the word even existed. It was like James Bond in the Old West. Creator Michael Garrison had once bought the film rights to Casino Royale for just $600, and you could feel that spy influence throughout the show. Each episode started with "The Night of" and featured gadgets that looked straight out of a Victorian sci-fi novel. The tech was wildly futuristic for the 1800s. Steam-powered machines, hidden weapons, bizarre contraptions. Writers took inspiration from Edgar Allan Poe, H.G. Wells, and Jules Verne. The stories were thrilling, but also clever. The show carved out its own space in pop culture, and its style influenced everything that came after. Robert Conrad thought the DA would be his big breakthrough in courtroom drama. It was 1971, and he had just teamed up with Jack Webb, the mastermind behind Dragnet. This time, Conrad wasn't playing a brawler or a cowboy. He was District Attorney Paul Ryan, trying real cases pulled from actual files. He said the role made him feel like a lawyer. "I suit up. I feel capable," he told reporters. He was confident. "We'll have a big hit," he said. Harry Morgan was cast alongside him, adding even more weight to the project. Everything seemed right, but it didn't work. The show lasted just 13 episodes. That quick cancellation hit Conrad hard. He had hoped the series would run for at least 4 years. Instead, he was left questioning whether people would ever accept him as anything other than a TV tough guy. He didn't give up. In 1972, he tried again with Adventures of Nick Carter, a TV movie that was meant to launch a new series. The role was a perfect fit. Nick Carter was a rough-edged private detective, and Conrad could fight, punch, and throw people around just like he did on the Wild Wild West. There were disguises, stunts, boxing scenes. Big names like Shelley Winters and Broderick Crawford filled the cast. This wasn't just a small gamble. It was a serious shot at a long-term franchise. The character Nick Carter had been around since the 1800s. There was history and potential, but the pilot flopped. The network passed. Ratings were flat. IMDb gave it just 6.1 out of 10. For Conrad, it felt like hitting a wall. This was supposed to be his next big thing. Instead, it became his first major flop after the Wild Wild West. Later that same year, Conrad got a call that changed things, but not in the way he hoped. Roy Scheider, hot off The French Connection, had quit a spy series called Assignment. Munich, after the 1972 Olympic massacre, forced the production to move to Vienna. The new title was Assignment, Vienna, and Conrad took over the lead. He played a smooth bar owner who secretly worked for U.S. intelligence, tracking spies and criminals in Europe. The setup sounded slick: exotic locations, international crime. He wore turtlenecks and chased bad guys through cobbled streets. ABC had bundled it with 2 other detective shows, The Delphi Bureau and Jigsaw, calling the trio The Men. But the project was cursed from the start. It aired only 8 episodes before being pulled in 1973. Not even Vienna could save it. Around the same time, a strange and ugly incident shook Conrad's personal life. In Fort Lauderdale, 1971, some men blocked his car and started hurling insults. They claimed he attacked one of them with a shoe. Battery charges followed. Conrad denied it all. "I don't hit people with shoes," he said. "I'm a martial artist. If I wanted to hurt you, I'd know how." He fled before police arrived. That made things worse. He couldn't talk about it in detail because of ongoing litigation, but the tabloids ran wild. A friend, described in reports as a famous bandit, said the whole thing was ridiculous. But the damage was done. People started to wonder whether the line between his violent TV roles and real-life persona was starting to blur. Then came a role that felt like redemption. In 1976, Conrad was cast as Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington in Ba Ba Black Sheep. This wasn't just a character, Boyington was a real war hero who led the Black Sheep Squadron during World War II. He had fought in China with the Flying Tigers and shot down 6 Japanese planes before even joining the Marines. Boyington, now older, served as the show's advisor and called it fiction based on reality. He had been 30 during the war. Conrad's version was 35. The series was gritty, emotional, and full of tension between a rebellious commander and his young pilots. It worked. This time, the audience clicked with him. He wasn't just a TV tough guy anymore. He was a war hero. But even that success came with controversy. In the second season, NBC retooled the show to boost ratings. They added 4 female nurses, one of whom was played by Conrad's daughter Nancy. Viewers and critics weren't happy. They called it Pappy's Lambs. Real veterans of the Black Sheep Squadron were even more upset. Women with 1970s hairstyles serving on a Watu air base? It didn't feel right. Conrad's decision to cast his daughter sparked accusations of nepotism. This wasn't the last time he'd do it either. Over the years, he would often use his influence to get family members screen time, sometimes at the cost of a show's integrity. Then came the fight to keep Ba Ba Black Sheep alive. Activist groups like Women Against Violence on television wanted it off the air. They didn't like the tone, the fighting, or the message. Conrad didn't back down. He started calling TV station managers personally, pleading with them to keep the show on. He reminded them of what the Wild Wild West had done for their ratings. But it wasn't enough. On April 6, 1978, the show was officially canceled. Just 36 episodes aired. Conrad had fought hard, but he lost that battle. Still, the recognition came. For his performance as Pappy Boyington, Conrad won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Male Actor. He was also nominated for a Golden Globe. These awards meant a lot. They weren't just from critics, they were from the audience. Regular people connected with him. They believed in the character. They saw more than action scenes and stunts. They saw depth, vulnerability, and leadership. In 1977, Robert Conrad stood in front of the camera with a battery on his shoulder and said, "I dare you to knock this off." That moment didn't just sell batteries, it made him unforgettable. It was a simple ad, but it exploded across the country. People saw it during primetime shows. It ran again and again, and soon everyone knew the tough guy with the Eveready battery. Talk shows like The Tonight Show and The Carol Burnett Show couldn't resist poking fun. Even Conrad admitted he was flattered when Johnny Carson parodied him. Funny thing is, more people remembered him from that battery dare than from all his years starring in the Wild Wild West or Black Sheep Squadron. The ad worked so well because it matched his image perfectly. Conrad wasn't just acting tough, he was tough. He'd built his whole career on that. So when Eveready launched the campaign in 1977, it made sense. They wanted people to believe their batteries were strong and dependable. Who better than Conrad to deliver that message? He wasn't just reading a script, he was the message. In one variation, he dared people to call it regular, pushing Eveready's alkaline batteries as superior to ordinary zinc-carbon ones. It was smart marketing at a time when battery tech was changing fast. People needed to know why they should pay more. Conrad made them believe it. The campaign didn't just boost Eveready, it boosted Conrad. It gave him steady income while other actors were scrambling between roles. That ad ran from 1977 through 1978 and beyond, and the money kept coming. Compared to the ups and downs of TV work, this was solid. He didn't have to chase every offer. He could wait for something worth doing. Meanwhile, companies lined up to work with him. That single campaign gave him more exposure, more stability, and probably more money than his acting jobs at the time. It was a peak, not just for Conrad, but for Eveready. which went on to claim 50% of the battery market. But while his face was everywhere, things were falling apart at home. In 1977, the same year he became a commercial legend, he divorced Joan Kenley. They had been married for 25 years, 5 kids, a full life together. She had been with him when he was just a teenager, delivering milk and working on docks. She supported him long before anyone in Hollywood knew his name. But fame changes things. So does ego. The marriage had lasted through the chaos of TV stardom, but it couldn't survive Conrad's growing pride and the pressure of constant success. They separated quietly, but the wounds ran deep. Joan never remarried. She died in 1998 at 62. Only a year after the divorce, another storm began. In 1978, Conrad hosted the Miss National Teenager pageant. That night, 43-year-old Conrad met 17-year-old Livelda Ione Fan, who was handing over her crown. On live TV, he asked her when she'd be turning 18. It shocked everyone. The boldness, the timing. It was a scandal from the start. But Conrad didn't back down. Years later, he told People magazine that it wasn't robbing the cradle. He joked that it was more like grand theft. They married in 1983 when Livelda was 22 and Conrad was 48. They stayed married for 27 years and had 3 children together. But people never forgot how it started. That shadow followed him for the rest of his career. By then, Conrad had 8 kids, 5 from his first marriage, 3 from his second. 2 separate families, huge age gaps, complex emotions. Some of his older kids were closer in age to their stepmother than to their younger half-siblings. Somehow, he made it work. Holidays, gatherings, even joint film projects. He brought them all together as best he could. But it wasn't easy. Supporting that many people, kids, 2 ex-wives, and a career in decline was a constant financial strain. And behind the scenes, Conrad was still carrying scars from his own childhood. His parents were just teenagers when he was born. He knew what instability felt like. Maybe that's why he tried so hard to hold everything together, even as it slipped away. In the 1980s, he found a new way to stay in the spotlight, by making it a family business. He launched Shane Productions, named after his son, and began casting his kids in everything. In High Mountain Rangers, 1987, he starred with sons Shane and Christian. When that show got canceled, he quickly created Jesse Hawks, 1989, another series with the same cast. Only 6 episodes aired, but the message was clear. He wasn't letting go. His daughter Nancy appeared in multiple projects, and his daughter Joan worked behind the scenes. He hired friends from back home in Chicago. Everyone was connected, but this tight circle made it hard to bring in fresh talent. As the years went on, the shows lost their spark, and so did Conrad's grip on Hollywood. And then came the darkest chapter. Behind the tough guy act and the family legacy, Robert Conrad was battling something he kept hidden: alcoholism. It started quietly in the late 1970s and grew worse over time. On the outside, he was still the man who dared you to knock the battery off. But inside, he was spiraling. Drinking made him angrier, less patient, and harder to work with. The addiction strained his marriage to Livelda. Family dinners turned into arguments. The man who once held his family close began pushing them away. Even when he gave his daughter Nancy a role in Ba Ba Black Sheep and worked with his sons on Jesse Hawks, it wasn't enough to fix the cracks. His kids no longer saw the hero. They saw someone fighting demons he couldn't defeat. His house, once full of life, started to feel empty. Then came the final blow from Hollywood. In 1999, The Wild Wild West was remade with Will Smith in the lead role. That hit Conrad hard. He had risked his neck, literally, for that show. He once fell 12 feet during a stunt and landed on his head. And now, the studio didn't even bother to ask him to be involved. For him, that remake wasn't just a new version of a show. It was a sign. Hollywood had moved on. The industry he helped build didn't look back. He made it clear he wasn't happy about it. "I'm disappointed. I don't care about Will Smith. I don't want to," he said. The message was clear. The old heroes were being erased, and no one cared. By then, Conrad had already pulled away from most people. His Malibu ranch became his hiding place. He had once thrived on connection, singing in nightclubs, recording albums, performing live. But addiction changed him. He refused help. He shut out the people who loved him. Friends faded away. The ranch, surrounded by beauty, felt more like a prison. Then, in 2003, everything collapsed in one horrible night. It was March 31st. Conrad was driving his Jaguar on Highway 4 in the Sierra Nevada foothills. He was 68 years old. His blood alcohol level was 0.22, nearly 3 times the legal limit. Around 7:15 p.m., he crossed into oncoming traffic and hit a Subaru head-on. Inside was Kevin Burnett, a 26-year-old just driving home. The crash was brutal. Both men had to be airlifted to hospitals. Conrad's condition was serious, but stable. Burnett was alive, but badly hurt. The man who once played fearless action stars had become the cause of a real-life tragedy. Conrad's body paid the price. He spent 4 months in the hospital. He had a brachial plexus injury. Nerves in his neck and arm were destroyed. His right side was partially paralyzed. His speech slowed. He needed a cane and a sling just to move. In court, fans barely recognized him. The tough guy now looked fragile, lost. His wife later said he had just 40% use of his left arm and often needed a wheelchair. Depression set in. But the worst pain wasn't his. It was Burnett's. Kevin had multiple fractures in his leg. Doctors fixed what they could, but his life was never the same. He lost mobility. He lost peace. His father later said he became a different person. 2 years later, in July 2005, Kevin died from perforated ulcers. He was only 28. His family believed the crash had triggered everything: the trauma, the stress, the health issues that killed him. One choice, one drive. 2 lives ruined. Conrad faced the law. He was charged with 2 felonies. At first, he pleaded not guilty. But then he changed his mind and accepted a no-contest plea. The punishment? 6 months of house arrest, 5 years of probation, alcohol counseling, and over $3,600 in fines. He was ordered not to drink and couldn't drive more than 6 miles from home. Burnett's family sued. The case was settled privately, but the amount was said to be large. When Kevin died, people wondered if new charges would follow. But Conrad's lawyer stopped that, arguing double jeopardy. Eventually, even his probation was cut short. Legally, it was over. But the guilt stayed. In 2013, fans got one more look at their old hero. At a reunion event, Conrad appeared with his old co-stars. But he wasn't the same. He needed help just to walk to his chair. His voice was weak. The man who once leapt from rooftops now moved slowly, carefully. Still, he made people laugh. His sense of humor hadn't left. For many in the room, it was a bittersweet moment. They were seeing a legend at the very end of his story. Yet, somehow, Conrad still found a way to connect. In 2008, he started the PM show with Robert Conrad. It was a national radio show, and it took off. Over 5 million people listened. Every week, he took calls, interviewed celebrities, and shared stories. He didn't need visuals, just his voice and his charm. The network originally thought he'd be the next big political host, but he was too warm for that. His strength was in being real, being himself. When he passed away in 2020, his estate was worth around $10 million. That was far less than what many expected. With 8 children and several properties, including his beloved Bear Valley retreat, it wasn't an easy inheritance to divide. The retreat had been his escape. He lived off the grid, no TV, no phone, just peace. But in the end, he didn't die there. He died in Malibu, surrounded by better medical care, far from the mountains he once called home. On February 8, 2020, Robert Conrad died of heart failure at age 84. A small private service was planned for March 1st, what would have been his 85th birthday. His death came at a time when many classic TV icons were also passing, marking the end of an era. For fans, it was more than a loss. It was the final curtain for a man who had been part of their childhood, part of their dreams,